So when I'm having those conversations with patients, I do rely a lot on statistics. Just the fact that having two myopic parents, kids are four times as likely to be nearsighted. One myopic parent, we're about 1.5 times as likely to be nearsighted. Usually, we see myopia between 8 to 14 years of age is typically when it starts. But I think the most important thing to remember is that the earlier you develop myopia, the higher the risk of progression. So when I see a 7-year-old who's a -2, part of that conversation with parents, I say, look, I don't want to scare you, but if we do nothing, the biggest predictor of high myopia is having an earlier age of onset of myopia. So your 7-year-old child being a -2, if we do nothing, we can almost guarantee that they're going to be highly nearsighted later in life. And the problem with that is that the more nearsighted you become, the more risk of things later in life, like myopic macular degeneration, which is the leading cause of blindness in myopes, right? And cataracts, retinal detachments. It also is just lifestyle wise, right? Being a -2, you wake up, you can see perfectly well, arm's length. You can squint to see better when you need to, versus being a -8, right? The second you wake up in the morning, you have to reach for something, whether it's glasses or contacts. You just can't function without it. And then, that also makes LASIK more complicated in the future if they choose to do LASIK. Cataract surgery becomes more complicated and higher axial lengths. So we're also lifestyle wise just trying to optimize patients' lifestyle in the future so that we set them up for success. That's probably one of the biggest questions I get is how much screen time. There's really no perfect thing. In school, it's tough, right? Because you can't really control that in school. But at home, I always talk about taking breaks, the 20/20 rule, every 20 minutes of near work, you just look far away for 20 seconds and give your eyes a rest. Not holding things too close. If you catch your child doing this, just make sure we readjust and we have more space. And really just that hour and a half to 2 hours daily of outdoor time, just to try to break it up as much as you can. I tend to suggest limiting it to about 2 hours a day, but that's not always doable. And everyone's human, right? And I think that's the most important thing to remember is you just do what you can. If there's a day where your child is spending 8 hours in front of a computer, that's okay, right? As long as the majority of the time we try to limit it and we try to build those good habits. I also talk to the kids directly too. I'm a big fan of talking to the kids and having the parents overhear it versus talking to the parent directly, because I feel like when I'm talking to the parent, it's easier for the child to kind of just check out and not really listen to what I'm saying. But if I'm talking directly to the child, I feel like it helps them be engaged in their own health. And they really understand why it's so important. And I feel like it makes them feel like, okay, it's me and you, we're doing this together, right? And it just helps with compliance. It helps with them understanding why they're putting their glasses on every day, why they're putting their contacts on every day, why they're coming in more frequently than just their annual exam. I really have felt like it makes such a difference with compliance and making them feel engaged in their own health and having them understand why we're doing this. I really hone in on premyopia. So if someone's 9 to 12 years of age and they're less than a plus 0.75, they're considered premyopes. That's a really good gauge of where they're going to be, right? So I try to identify those patients as much as I can. And if someone's 9 and they're a plus 0.25, I'm having that myopia conversation, right? And I'm saying, look, Your child falls into this premyopia category. This is a very interesting category because they're not quite nearsighted yet, but they could be, and there's a high likelihood that they can be. Now's a really great time to start doing more of those lifestyle factors, really honing in on outdoor time. Outdoor time is the number one modifiable thing that we can do to prevent myopia. I do also do low dose atropine for premyopia, so that's something that I offer as well. And I've had really great success with that. I have several kids that I've managed to keep as premyopes with low dose atropine treatment. I think that's such a great tool that we have, is identifying a premyopic child, because we really can make an impact. Because if I can keep someone pre-myopic until they're 15, that's okay, right? Because even if they become a little nearsighted, we're talking about a -1, -1.25, right? And again, that's much more manageable than a -7. One of the things that I found most helpful is, I work downtown. I work in a downtown area, so I tend to see more adults. So the majority of my patients are, 30, 40, 50. I have those conversations with myopic parents, right? So if I am seeing a -8 and I'm done with the exam, I always say, "Oh, do you have kids?" And if that they have kids, I say, we can actually do something about this now. And that's the biggest driver for me for myopia management. I love seeing kids of parents who are -8s and -9s because they get it, right? They know the impact of myopia. They know what it's like to be a -8 and have had LASIK for quality of life, and be know after LASIK, be able to wake up and see and not have to reach for glasses and contacts. So really having those conversations as early as I can, really getting my staff on board of identifying these patients, having those conversations, saying, "Hey, there's something that we can do about this now." To be able to provide that service for a parent who's highly nearsighted, knowing that they have a child who's at high risk of becoming nearsighted, and knowing, oh, we can actually do something about this now. We can actually stop this from becoming a huge problem later in life. We can prevent diseases from happening because my child is highly nearsighted. We can prevent complications later in life because my child isn't going to be highly nearsighted. And that, I really think, is such a key. Besides that, just getting them in, right? Again, I'm a very big fan of prevention. I always tell patients, I want to see you every year, whether you feel like your prescription's changing or not, because it's not just a prescription. We're also monitoring health. We're monitoring the health of the eyes. We're monitoring the health of the retina, the cornea, the dryness. There's just so many things that can impact health. So even if you feel like nothing's happening, even if you feel like everything's fine, just bring them in, because it could just be they're fine, and I'll see them in a year. But what if it's not? And what if there is something that we can identify, that we can treat early, and prevent something from happening in the future?